What's up, everybody? This is going to be a continuation of a series I started with my last video, and while that one was very specific to the conversations you might have with an artist or even a counter person before having decided that you want to get tattooed, today's video we're going to get into the specifics of how a conversation might go once you've decided on your artist and are in the process of setting up an appointment and communicating what it is that you want to have tattooed. So some things that I want to mention beforehand, and I think I did hit on some of these in the first video. The link will be in the description for that one. I do just want to reiterate the importance of some of these things. So if you can, you always want to schedule in advance. It's just obvious. Schedule in advance. Put yourself in a position where you're getting the best version of your artist and they're not having to work under undue pressure. With that being the case, do prepare to leave a deposit. That's usually going to be non-refundable because at that point you're just paying for the time invested in the drawing. A lot of the times that will roll into the eventual cost of your tattoo, so it's almost like you're making a down payment on your tattoo. Deposit being non-refundable, it's especially going to be the case if you decide that you need to reschedule last minute. So always try to allow them 24 or 72 hours if you do need to reschedule. I know some things can't be helped, but try to avoid that. And then, like I said, the deposit also pays for the time invested in preparing the art, so that they're not having to just do it the day of. Some artists may still do that, but I'll get into that a little bit more later on. One more thing I wanted to add about the non-refundable nature of deposits. So if you do have to reschedule your appointment, sometimes, like we're all people. A lot of artists will honor your deposit for a later time if you do have to reschedule. But typically, especially if it happens numerous times, an artist will require that you put down another deposit because that will have been numerous times where they set aside a specific time slot for you and then they didn't end up making money on that occasion. So alternatively, they could have booked somebody else and made money. So that's just something I wanted to mention. It tends to be pretty standard. Do your research ahead of time. You do want to check out their portfolio. You want to be pretty aware of what kinds of tattoos that they do. You want to make sure that what you're wanting and how you're envisioning that tattoo, it kind of aligns with their current body of work. Some artists are more versatile than others. Some artists, they have a very specific skill set. So however that goes, if your artist is one that's a little bit more versatile, you might just want to have a little bit more of a conversation with them about to what degree what you're wanting is something that lands in their wheelhouse, their comfort zone. And then also, before you even approach the artist, make sure that you do have your reference material prepared. Then it could be, again, they could be very specific what you're wanting. So, you could have 3 pictures of tattoos that are very, very similar. Or, in some cases, you may have 7 or 8 different pictures and have super specific things that you like about each. Just be prepared to be able to communicate that, and then just be very patient and just try to be flexible with them. If they say that, like, this detail is not going to work because of the size of your tattoo that you're wanting or whatever it may be, just, try to be flexible. Some artists, they may require an in-person consultations, while some may be able to do a consultation with you online. It's just kind of their personal preference. Sometimes your personal situation may warrant that you're only able to do an online consultation. For instance, like if you're traveling to get tattooed, some artists may be able to do a day of consultation with you, and they may be able to just draw on the spot and they don't feel like they're put under pressure in that situation. So it could go either way with that. Many reputable artists are now dealing with something. It's kind of a new phenomenon where you've got this reputable artist. They may have X number of followers. So there are people online that will duplicate an artist's online presence. So basically what they're going to do is they're just going to go to that person's Instagram, take screenshots of every post that they've ever made, and then basically just make an exact copy of that person's Instagram. And then on the Instagram name, they'll just add a underscore or an extra S or however it may be. So with that being the case, their intention there is to scam you out of putting a deposit online. So I think it's important that everyone is aware that this is a thing. There are scammers on the internet specifically taking advantage of tattooers and their clients. So
you're a big fat phony.
The only surefire way to circumvent that is to do an in-person consultation and pay your deposit in cash. But again, if you're traveling to get tattooed, or if your artist insists on doing an online consultation, there's really no way to get around that. Just do what you can to ascertain that the person that you're talking to is that artist. So with all that being said, we'll finally get into the actual list of things not to say and what you could say alternatively. So this first one is maybe more important to some clients than others. It just kind of depends on what mindset you're going into the tattoo process with. But my first thing not to say during the consultation, in-person consultation or online, how much is this going to cost?
$1 million.
So, especially when you're in the first beginning phases of the consultation process, how much is this going to cost? Being really quick to ask that question, it's just important to realize that there's no surefire way to determine what the price of the tattoo is going to be until the tattoo is either being done, because some artists do prefer to charge hourly, or at the very least, the design's been created. Because once I've done a drawing, I can and I know where the tattoo is going on the body, and I've gotten a chance to actually look at that person's part of the body, I can kind of give a vague idea of how much the tattoo is going to cost. So with that being the case, there's so many variables: the complexity of the drawing, placement on the body, the specifics of the body. Like one person's arm might be easier to tattoo than another, things like that. Again, not every tattooer does hourly rates, nor does every tattooer give quotes up front. Some may. But with that being said, I do want to stress it is very okay to communicate your budget. The worst case scenario, you communicate what your budget is. The artist tells you your tattoo can't be done within that budget based on the vision that they have of that tattoo in their head. So, but with that being the case, an option that I oftentimes will extend to clients is, okay, so you're working with this budget and you want this. At face value, my version of this tattoo, if that is more than the budget that I'm being allocated by the client, oftentimes there's a conversation to be had with the client about what details here are mandatory, which details can we leave out. Because if I'm looking at things as being super tedious, or just something that's going to make the tattoo significantly more expensive, and the client's not even looking at that and considering that to be a mandatory part of the tattoo, then we can just compromise that. We can just remove that, and I can do the tattoo for the price that the client's wanting. So yeah, just communicate your budget, but don't be so quick to get into the weeds of how much the tattoo is going to cost. So similar. My number 2 thing not to ask is, do you guys take card?
I think I'll use my credit card.
So here's the thing. A lot of shops do take card, but ultimately it's going to make your tattoo more expensive, because as a tattoo shop, if you're taking card, automatically the credit card company is taking a cut off the top of it is most often a percentage. So ultimately for the client, it's making the tattoo more expensive for them to be taking card. As they say, cash is king. So as a client, bring cash, especially for the tip after the tattoo is done. And obviously this is more relevant to the day of the tattoo. But like I said, credit card companies, they'll take their cut. It makes your tattoo more expensive. Also, some artists may be willing to take your payment services. So whether it's Zelle, Cash App, Venmo, whatever it is, some artists may do that. But with that being said, very few, if any at all, will ever have an issue with you paying cash. Cash is king. Okay, so for this next one, this is in the context of, okay, so you've put down your deposit, you've set your the the date of your appointment and everything, and you're waiting to hear from your artist. Something not to say is, have you drawn up my design yet?
Nope.
Here's the thing, and there's all different mindsets on this specific thing, but just don't ask to see the design in advance. Some artists may offer it for the sake of getting feedback from you, just to make sure that the design is going in the desired direction on your part. However, and I've known a lot of artists like this, many of us are serial procrastinators and don't draw it until the night before. And, again, it goes back to the whole, like, some artists perform well under pressure. Some artists may draw it right in front of you. And, there's advantages to that being the case if that's how your artist rolls. Yeah, sometimes for artists who can actually perform under the pressure of being watched, the process of conceptualizing and drawing is better in person, for the sake of avoiding, like, because if I could sit there and have a conversation with you while I'm drawing it, and you can kind of add in your input, that kind of alleviates a lot of the issues that are had with, if you were in that situation where you had to do an online, like if you had to do an online consultation, and you're just having to communicate all these details via text. Obviously there's certain little nuanced things that are going to get left out. So they may draw in front of you, they may not. But another thing with asking to see the design, especially when it hasn't been offered.
Stop it.
Oftentimes artists will avoid the entire process of providing you an opportunity to see the design beforehand, just because of the fact that there is a certain kind of client that will just overthink every little detail. And I don't know, there really is like an archetypal client that will needlessly change details that don't even actually like make that much of a difference in terms of the aesthetic of the design, but it's almost as if they just want to exert some sense of control. And I get it, like it's on your body, you're gonna wear this forever, but ultimately, like, we as artists make it our business to look at tattoos all day, every day. Like, this is a lifestyle. It's not just a career. It's not just about like there being some metric to ascertain that we've done our part. It's not like we have a degree in tattooing or whatever. But ultimately, 99.9% of the time, we know what is best. And that archetypal client that just wants to be able to like say that they had some input on the whole thing, it just creates undue stress, and it's not necessary. A little bit of trust goes a long way, and I'll get into that. So the other thing with like that same kind of in the same vein as that archetypal client that just wants to change things for the sake of saying that they got to dictate some change in the tattoo. The reason we don't show it to you ahead of time is because why would we provide you an opportunity to go show that design to all of your friends, every member of your family? None of these people are tattooers or even artists for that matter. And then having you come back with all these revisions that you want to impart on the tattoo, and then consequently doubling or tripling the amount of time and effort that we have to invest in the design process.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
For this reason, there's now a lot of artists that will actually provide like a finite number of revisions that can be made on the tattoo. Like a funny footnote, about a year or so ago, there was some woman tattooer that was charging like, she had package deals. So it was, and I'll probably make a whole video about this because it was really funny, but it's really crooked and not the way that this process should be done. But she had package deals to where it was like, I think the entry level package was like $1,700.
Damn!
And granted, this did not go towards the cost of your tattoo. This was just for the conceptualization process, and her starting fee was $1,700, and that would involve you having, like I said, a finite number of revisions you could make on the tattoo. And then she was willing to take, I can't remember what like the deluxe package was, but it went up to like $3,500 or like $5,000 that she would take from you up front just for the drawing of your tattoo. What? And then it all came out that she wasn't really doing all that much drawing. Like, you would think if you paid $5,000 for it that it was going to be this just super high, like, fine art kind of thing, but it was just, for lack of better phrasing, it was just some dog shit that she threw together on Procreate.
Literal doo-doo water?
So, anyways, with that being said, basically the point being, the drawing process beforehand, it is a labor of love. It is something that we do. A lot of the time we do it in good faith, and that's why by the time all is said and done, we've done it for free. The reason we take a deposit ahead of time is specifically so that if you decide you don't like or you don't want the tattoo or something happens, we got that time paid for that we invested in the drawing process. But then also, that is, I say we do it in good faith because ultimately we roll that deposit into the cost of the tattoo. Because ultimately we're glad to, do drawings for people if that ends up being a tattoo. So at this point, we are going to fast forward to the day of your tattoo. So these last couple of things are going to be what not to say during the tattoo. Right now, I want to do another side note. So things to actually do. Make sure on the day of your appointment, make sure that you eat a solid meal. The night before, make sure that you actually get a good night's rest. I know that there can be a lot of anxiety, but do what you need to do to make sure that you got a good night's rest, because eating, sleeping, basically providing for your body its basic needs.
He needs some milk.
It is important. Aside from those things, just taking care of your body. Bring yourself a little bit of candy, bring yourself some water, whatever you need to do to be able to sit still for however long it's going to take to do your tattoo. But also, leave your agenda open. Don't show up to the tattoo shop on the day of your appointment with this expectation of how long it's going to take. I mean, you might have been given an amount of time, but that's not going to have accounted for breaks, whether it's you taking breaks or your artist taking breaks. Granted, you should not be having to pay for your artist taking breaks. So if they are an hourly rate tattooer, I don't think that there's anything wrong at all with ascertaining whether or not when they get up to go take a 15-minute smoke break that you're not on their time. The clock's not rolling at that point, because that is ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
But leave your agenda open. Nobody likes getting put on a specific time frame. This whole process is not something that you should be rushing specifically because you've got to take your dog to get a massage afterwards or whatever it may be. Some side notes there. So you show up for your appointment, you're placing the stencil. Assuming you've brought a friend with you, which is in most cases fine. Some artists might prefer for you to, come alone. Don't turn to your friend once the stencil has been placed and say, "What do you think?" This kind of hits on nuances of my last point, but so like I said, coming alone is ideal. Bring a friend if needed, but don't ask their opinion at every opportunity or allow them to dictate the tattoo placement. But instead, just trust your artist. At this point, you should have done your homework. You've invested the time necessary to know with certainty that your artist is trustworthy. If minor adjustments to the stencil placement are necessary, most of the time your artist can and will make them accordingly without you even having to say anything. Similar to the drawing process. If needed, we'll prompt you for your input. We'll ask like, "Hey, do you like that? Hey, do you want to come check that out?" If it's necessary, just to make sure that you're happy with the placement. However, the friend that you brought, their opinion will not likely be asked for. They are not the person that has to wear the tattoo. So, if you're going to bring a friend, tell them to sit in the corner and shut up.
I ain't got time to be distracted by your worthless chime-ins. Go on.
That's it. That's all we need. All we need from them. If they make you feel good being there, that's fine, but we don't need their input. So another little side note. When you're making conversation with your artists, which this may or may not be the case with every artist, I might make jokes about the convention tattooer that goes in there with his big pair of headphones and his big watch and that whole persona. Some artists may actually do that for utilitarian reasons. Like, they may have a good reason that they wear headphones. It just gets them in their zone, and that's That's how they roll. That's how they operate. Some artists may, be conversationalists. Like I personally, I prefer to talk to clients. Like I would rather like build a rapport with them. But it's different for everybody. It's the same thing on the client end. Like, me personally, I may be in a mood to talk, but the client, they need to, have their headphones on. That's how they get in their zone. And I respect that. So don't try to force it one way or the other, just kind of read the room. So, but, while you're making conversation with the artists, it's one thing if you're trying to set up future cover-ups or whatever, if you're genuinely curious if there's anything that can be done about a tattoo. But if you can avoid it, try not to criticize tattoos that you already have. Because the thing is, like, I've time and time again interacted with clients that they want to criticize pointless details on tattoos that they already have, and it's just, you're distracting me with this invalid opinion on what's wrong with the tattoo that you already have. Like, it's usually like some minimalist tattoo, some tattoo that they walked in and got for shop minimum at some shop, or it might have been done by an apprentice or whatever it is. And they're criticizing the fact that there's a little wobble in the line or something like that. And it's just like, is this really what you want to fill the room with right now? Like, is this really what you want to distract me with right now? Like, I would so much rather talk to a person about like their lifestyle and what they enjoy. Like, what common ground do we have? Like, I don't care to hear about what you don't like about tattoos that you already have. The best way to alleviate concerns about tattoos that you feel like are less than ideal, get tattoos that you think are ideal, and you won't stress out that much about pointless little things in the tattoos that you already have. You'll look past the shortcomings of your old tattoos if you get new tattoos that you don't feel that way about. Kind of in the same realm as that, and this happens all the time and I hate it, don't ask for touch-ups on pre-existing work last minute. And a lot of the time they'll hear this, if I tip you, could I get you to touch this up? You should be tipping anyways. Like, or I don't know. Like, for that matter, like, I don't care if you tip or not. Like, me personally, I charge enough for my tattoos that, like, it's not a big deal one way or the other if somebody tips. Yes, you should. It's a service industry. But ultimately, that doesn't matter. But don't ask for, like, last-minute touch-ups. Like, that's something that should have been rolled into the whole consultation process. If you let me know in advance that you'd like for something to be touched up, even if it's something I didn't do, like, that's fine. But just don't mention it last minute, because I would have set up for it accordingly. Don't do that. All right, so these are some pretty good ones. So, again, this is in the realm of things that you'll hear said when someone's trying to force a conversation while they're getting tattooed. And it sucks to be in that position, because ideally it all happens naturally. But anyways, things that you hear often, and usually it's somebody's dad that says this, and there's a whole array of actual dad jokes that are made in the tattoo shop that I'll probably make a whole video about in the future. But anyways, some Chad, some divorced dad will often say this. It's, I bet you get to see a bunch of titties and asses.
What?
It's so problematic to even say this, but I've heard it so many times that I had to roll it into this video. And you would be surprised how often we actually do hear this. The problem here with that, with saying that, is that seeing clients in a vulnerable state, regardless of their gender, the nature of the familiarity or the relationship that we may have with any given client, it's a non-factor, because like, we're operating in the capacity of a career-driven professional. Now, and we've all heard of these, but like, many artists will take advantage of this. Aside from like the dudes that either have been canceled or are soon to be canceled, aside from those, most, if not all, will be willing to make accommodations accordingly if a client is made to feel at all uncomfortable for any reason, especially when it comes to the level of exposure that they may have when getting intimate areas tattooed. There's absolutely nothing wrong with discussing these kinds of things during the consultation process, due to the fact that some shops may have like a bullpen style to where everybody's just all tattooing in one big open floor, and then some may have private booths. So especially if you're a lady, like, make sure that if you are getting an intimate area tattooed, or if you're simply getting tattooed in an area where you're going to feel compromised, like you might be getting something on your ribs, and that might involve a little bit of boob having to be out or something. I mean, a lot of these things can be alleviated just by thinking a little bit about how you're dressing, or let me rephrase that because that sounds bad. You can tactfully dress yourself to where you can allow for the tattoo to be done without compromising other parts of your body. So for instance, like if you're getting a thigh piece, rather than wearing something that puts you in a position where you're having to lay around in the shop in your panties, like you can you're in your underwear. You could, I mean, I've seen girls wear dresses that have like a high split to where they can use all the material of that dress to keep themselves decent while at the same time being able to expose the part where they're getting the tattoo. So, I mean, sometimes you have to get kind of crafty with it, but all of that aside, feel free to ask during the consultation process. This probably is something I should have put earlier on in the video, but yeah, I mean, just make sure that you're comfortable with where the tattoo is being done, not on your body, but just where in the shop. Because oftentimes shops will have not only like an open bullpen for just, walk-ins and stuff like that. I mean, worst case scenario, your artist can ask to borrow somebody's, private booth to be able to, make sure that you're comfortable and make sure that you're, not feeling like you're compromised or anything. Because that whole thing about like creepy tattooers, like that's such an old thing. Like I think that the level of professionalism in the industry has elevated so much. And also, with that being the case, like, there's all female shops. I mean, like, I don't necessarily like recommend going and getting tattooed at a shop specifically on the merits of like everyone there being a female, but like if there happens to be an artist there that like you feel like is somebody you want to get tattooed by, that's an added benefit. It's that it's a bunch of girls there. Like it's it's like the girls' locker room.
Girls club, I said girls club. Girls club, I said girls
Boys
club.
not allowed.
Like you don't have to feel like you're compromised or anything. So my number 5 thing not to say in the latter portion of the tattoo process, and again, like you hear this just as often, if not more than the last one, I bet you make a ton of money.
Is totally made up. Pure fiction. It's fiction. It's fiction.
So, on the client end, yes, tattoos are expensive, but I wonder how many people actually break it down to ascertain how much of the money that you pay for a tattoo is actually going to your artist. I mean, there's obvious things like the cost of supplies. Every day somebody introduces a new product to the tattoo process that's 5 times the cost, if not more, than what we were using previously. What we were using before was just fine anyways, but then all of a sudden the supply truck doesn't have just generic brand A&D anymore. You got to have your Green Glide or whatever it may be. So it gets more expensive to make a tattoo all the time. The cost of shop rent, so whether that comes in the form of having to just outright pay a cut, whether that's 30, 40, even 50% of the cost of a tattoo just going straight to the shop, or if that comes in the form of somebody doing booth rent. So it kind of, it varies, but there's an amount of money from your tattoo that goes to that. Taxes. I mean, everybody pays taxes, but for a tattooer, it's most often we file a 1099, so we're self-employed. So that's straight up 15.3% of their income going just right off the top. Like that's going to Uncle Sam. So, and then also you can make a lot of money as a tattooer, but the thing is, the real art of it is staying booked. Because yeah, like you might look at it and like, oh, he charges $200 an hour. That's insane. But it's like, how many hours a week are we actually getting to work? And that's mostly on the artist. I bet you make a ton of money. Sometimes, yeah. But here we are in November, and the slow season's starting to really hurt, and we're also going into a recession, so people are not having as much money to spend on tattoos, hence me having the time to make YouTube videos. But anyways, so that is going to be all for today. Some of these things that I discussed, I'll be going into more detail on in like specific, like their own videos. This may be the last of the series, because I do think that I covered everything that I wanted to cover with the what not to say in a tattoo shop. I may make like one more, but we'll see. I do also want to get into some outside of tattooing YouTube content, talking about music, or probably not games as much, but movies and stuff like that. I've been watching a lot of like really corny horror movies here lately, and I kind of want to do some content about that. But anyways, so if you guys have any questions whatsoever about any of these things, please feel free to leave a comment. I will address them either in a video, or I'll just jump into the discourse with you in the comment section. So I may be making a Discord specifically for this YouTube channel soon, so we can, there'll be more conversations to be had there. I may be making merch for the YouTube channel. I do have merch already, it's just my own personal merch. I'll put a link to that in the description. I'll put a link to the other video down there, as well as it'll be somewhere on the screen here at some point. So anyways, thanks for watching, you guys. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you on the next one. See ya.